We'll now move on to our first keynote of the day from Clarissa Rios Rojas, who's a research associate in public policy for CSER. But she's much more than that. Clarissa is also a science diplomat working at that interface of science and policy making most of the time, making those networks and systems that Paul talks about so eloquently. Clarissa's going to speak to us for half of the 10 to 11 slot, maybe a bit more, and then we'll take some questions afterwards. As always, if you're watching online, there is a thread specifically related to Clarissa's talk, and you can also ask questions in that section of the Discord, and we'll make sure that some of those make their way to Clarissa on stage. Clarissa, your slides are here, and the stage is yours. I'll come and join you for Q&A after. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So I would like to start with something that happened today in the morning. I was trying to look at my presentation on the bus, and then I got an email. And this email was from a contact that we have at the UN, and he was telling us, to all the experts that we were invited last week to a roundtable, that these proposals are going to make it to the high-level advisory board for multilateralism at the UN Secretary General. So I immediately scrolled down to see what are these proposals, are my proposals there, and one of the first things that came out was the Science-Policy Interface. That was one of the things that I was trying to push during those conversations. And then there was also creating policy transfer offices at universities, which is also something that I dream to have everywhere. And then creating a global catastrophic risk unit or office in the United Nations, and having policy risk officers. I mean, a lot of things that were like, oh, this is so great, I'm so happy that this is happening, and there must be something that we are doing right. And I want to tell you how that thing happened, because some people that made it happen are sitting here. And if I don't tell you at the end of the presentation, please remind me to tell you exactly how we went from here to here. So I was asked to do a presentation today about designing practical solutions for the management of global risk. So this is what I was hired for. And what I want to show you today is exactly that person that is there navigating that journey and what has happened in the last 2 years. So please join me in this presentation. And if you want to know if there is something for you here, I think it's fair for everyone, because you have to answer emails and do work. So let me tell you. One of the things that I'm going to do is to share some lessons, my failures, my achievements, and then with this, I hope that we start a conversation of what you are doing at your institutions or what is close to your heart and you want to start doing. With inspiration, I just hope that if you're a researcher and you have that bug inside you saying, like, I want to do something else with my research that is going outside academia, maybe this presentation is for you. And with bi-directional communication, I want to know, are you doing science policy interfaces at your institutions? Are you focusing your work on policy? I want to know, at CSER we want to know because we want to exchange knowledge and grow together. And the last thing is an invitation, and I'll let you know an invitation at the very end as well. So when I come to CSER, I had to do this planning, of course, like how am I going to develop during these 3 years ahead. And one of the things that I wanted to focus on was to know what has CSER been doing so far in terms of policy. What are the lessons learned? What can we use as basis to keep building from that? The second thing was to map stakeholders. With whom have we been working? Whom do we need to reach out to achieve GCR prevention and mitigation? And also, I also thought that public relations are very, very important, because even when CSER and institutions that are alike are doing an excellent job, not everyone knows about them. Not everyone have dinner tables where we discuss about nuclear winter and AI, super rising, and etc. So how do we do this? So I thought that if I do a combination of those 3 different parts of work, I will build networks that will open up opportunities for me to influence an individual level, but also for CSER and for external stakeholders to influence collectively. So the first thing, of course, that I did was to do a set of interviews to some researchers at CSER to know what has been working well, and that has been presented in this report that was launched last year. So if you are interested to know what are the different pathways that a researcher can do to influence in policy, we have study cases, we have the skills that researchers need, we have even like a step-by-step guide of the things that you should do before, during, and after doing research in global catastrophic risk. What topics are on demand? Which are the institutions that are very interested to know more about your research? So all of that is in that report, thanks to all the excellent work that CSER researchers have been doing for the last 5 years. I recommend you to take a look if you want, and if you don't want to read many, many pages, you can go to the YouTube video where we did the launching of this report, and we talk a little bit with other stakeholders about what's the significance of having more research being into policy, feeding into policy. We had Max Tegmark from the Future of Life Institute joining us and discussing this. We also had the head of UNESCO Peru, and we also had a representative from the South African Science Academy. And we had a really rich conversation, and I think that having more voices from the Global South is also key for having global conversations about global catastrophic risks. So the second thing, if you remember the 3 circles, was about public relations. And I think that here there was a more building process and a strategic process, because I thought, if I want more people to talk about these things, I need to reach out to the media. I need to reach the podcast. I need to reach different stakeholders that are my windows to the world, where I can present all the work that we are doing at CSER. So you can see there some pieces that I managed to reach out to them, or some of them invited me through CSER to be part of some of the people that they interviewed to talk about these risks. And as you can see, I could have Peruvian newspapers talking about global catastrophic risk. And my favorite one is that one that says, "Clarissa can see the future," because a very far relative that I never heard of reached out to me, and then she said, "Clarissa, I saw your paper in the, in La República, and this thing is happening with my husband. Can you tell me if he's cheating on me or no?" And I was like, I'm not a clairvoyant, like, bless her, but it was very funny. And to be honest, when I started working at CSER, and I will say that I work on on existential risk, people will think that I was working with psychologists. And when you reach 50 years, 60 years, 30 years, and you have existential crisis, so some people will ask me, like, "Oh, you work on this? I'm having an existential crisis right now." So these things are part of the documents and tools that I use when I want to introduce someone new to this field. So I will say, like, "Have you seen this paper? Or have you seen this thing? Or have you seen a podcast that I did?" And that's the part when I also try to reach out to different podcasts and universities and institutions that I'm working on science advice, for example. One example is the Geneva Center for Security Policy. They do a lot of executive courses to diplomats and to civil servants, so that's a perfect place to talk about GCRs. So I was invited to do one of those conversations. I also was invited for the BWC, the Biological Weapon Convention, so that's another excellent place where we can start talking about biorisk and then bring people to talk about global catastrophic risk in general. Then some other examples also include the Embassy of the UK in Portugal was interested on the Science-Policy Interface. So since those are one of the things I do, I could talk about global catastrophic risk. And basically, this is just to show you that there are different ways that you can use your different topics or areas of interest to bring a little bit, to be a window to talk about global catastrophic risk. And the Science for Policy podcast is from SAPIA. So this is a group of scientists that are advising the European Commission. Of course, I had to be there as well. And how many of these things do you think I was invited for, and how many I was looking for them? Like 50-50, 90-10? That's a secret, but I can tell you later. And yes, I mean, all these different organizations have been, for me, a window to do network, to meet more stakeholders, and to think about what we can do together. And then something that I would like to emphasize is that GCR community and academics have been doing an excellent job that so far, unfortunately, has been just staying in the north. So part of this planning for sure had to include, like, how do we bring this to the global south? And of course, the first thing that is gonna impede us that is that the language. And unfortunately, I just speak 2 languages, which is English and Spanish, but I try to do it my best effort. So you can see I made a presentation from CILAC. Follow CILAC is where all the scientific community in Latin America gets together to talk about science, and one area is focused on science and policy, so I use it as well to talk about GCRs. There is a podcast that is focused on foresight, and then they were interested to see about what's foresight and GCRs, so I was invited there. And then in Saudi Arabia, the university also invited me to be part of a panel, and I thought that was quite interested to go and to try to, even with English, just try to enter into that world, that the MENA region, the African region, that is not very well associated with global catastrophic risks. And also I did some presentations in Malaysia, one for the university and one for the APEC, talking about what's the importance of science policy, and again, GCRs. And I also want to bring the attention to Riesgos Catastróficos Globales, which is GCRs in Spanish, and I think Juan is here visiting us today, so please also talk to him. So at this point, I was already fulfilling 2 of my big bubbles, let's say. Like, I knew what CSER was doing, I knew what CSER was really good at, and I was building public relationships, and these 2 things really helped me to have like a mapping of stakeholders. And as I said, this helped me to build networks and, most importantly, create opportunity for me to influence at the first level in an individual level. And here I want to just, I chose 4 examples that more or less represent what the work of CSER has been in the last 2 years. So the first one is the Framework for Global Science. And this is a new scientific agenda for the Sendai Framework. So what the COPs are for climate change, the Sendai Framework is for global risk. And after 11 years, they decided that we need to update our scientific agenda. And we need to, be thinking what's going to happen in the future, what's going to happen now, and what do we need to innovate. They asked a group of experts to come and be part of the group that was advising the core group, drafting it. And I managed to find my way on how to become one of those advisors. And of course, when they send you these reports, as an advisor, if you have already worked in this type of exercises, you will comment on the Word document. But of course, if you want to achieve more, you have to do more than what they are asking you. So I will bring all my ideas or the opportunities to the center, and then have like a collective discussion about what are the things that we can bring to the new Sendai scientific agenda. I collected those ideas. And after that, I made a video on YouTube that was, of course, hidden just for the person with the link. And I make a video saying, like, so this is what we think, you should do this and that. And these type of things, I think, creates trust, as Paul was saying. They can see your face, they can hear you talking, they can see you move your hands like a crazy person. Whatever it is, it makes them feel that you're also interested in helping them. And that, I think, was also a way for me to talk more with the lead researcher of this project, which later became part of the Science-Policy Interface, but I'll tell you that later. So that's one example. And the great thing about this report is that from 8 priorities, 3 priorities are now focusing on existential risk, which is like a major thing next to the UN Secretary General report on our common agenda that also focus on the future and global risk report and future generations. The second thing that I also thought will be very interesting will be to associate myself with an organization that works very well with the private and with the industry. And to my eyes, the World Economic Forum does it really well. So as well, I managed to be part of the Global Future Council on Frontier Risks. One of the members of this council is the director of the UN Geneva, for example, which brings a lot of experience, a lot of ideas to the group. And this is enriching for me. And this also is another channel for me to talk about GCRs. And we have written some white papers, and in those white papers we have reference to the work that CSER researchers have been doing for the past 5 years. There are also policy reports that I did with my colleagues at CSER, and we are talking about existential risks as well. The other thing that I was also very happy to be part of is that Lord Bird at the Parliament in the UK has been pushing for the idea to create a bill for future generations' well-being. And of course, they asked CSER to please bring some of their experts to come and join them and help them to advise them. And of course, I said, like, me, please, I want to be part of this group, please let me in. And we were having like many sessions with their like workshops, and we were feeding also into this. I think this is a very historic piece for the UK, and I'm quite happy that this seems to be going forward. And the other thing is we have been also doing submissions of evidence to the UK Parliament. And after that we have been doing that, we have been uploading it into Apollo, which is an open source place where anyone in the world can access. And specifically this foresight for unknown long-term and emerging risks that we wrote at CSER has been having a lot of attention. And I know because every time that someone wants to see that paper, I receive a notification saying to please send a copy. So this is some of the work that as a, let's say, individual level or only as at CSER level we have been doing. The other thing that this work has led me to is to be part of major, to advise in a major way, let's say, or like, yeah, a little bit zoom out. And that's, for example, when I have been asked to come to the Biological Weapon Convention and do a presentation to the meeting, during the meeting of experts. Or, for example, some weeks ago, the OECD Foresight Office is trying to do more on global catastrophic risks. So they say, Clarissa, please come and help us think how we can do it. And one of the things very important that also got from that conversation was we need more voices from the Global South. How do we make it happen? How do we make people think about these issues and a foresight? And then what I was telling today when I just started the presentation, the opportunity to be part of this high-level advisory board advisors came out, and that's also something that I'm going to tell you later. So now, let's go from individual to collective. So something that at CSER we are going all in, if you play poker, is to go and strengthen the science-policy interface. Because I think that this is our best tool at the moment and how to make things happen. And for doing that, we thought that to build this community, we have to start small. So from the global catastrophic risk academic community, we started focusing on the people that has already have some experience in policy. And we are bringing them towards us. And from the policy community, we are not interested in the policymakers at this moment. We are interested in the policy brokers. So the institutions and people that, again, are going to open windows for us, that understand the policy landscape, that understand the limitations of time and topics, and then they can give us all the information that we don't have because we are still in the academic world. And that's how we try to put them together. So now that we have these two groups, we started with a group of 30 members. Half of them, more or less, will be academics, as I said, and the other ones will be policy brokers. What we want to do through a series of workshops and monthly meetings is to make common understanding. How time works for an academic at the university, how time works for a policy broker or a policy maker. Are we talking about years and months versus hours and days? We also want them to understand what are the methods that our researchers are using in foresight, for example. We want to understand what are the needs that these policy brokers have. Do they need more research? Do they need more concrete policy ideas? What do they really need? And by understanding the limitations and building a common language between these two groups, what we want to build is trust. And when we brought the group together, everyone was very excited about, okay, let's do a policy brief, let's do a policy report. But I think like what we need to do is to focus on the group itself. Like, how do we make a group to be resilient, to be cohesive with time? Because we work very well sometimes. We want to do a report, we do an expert elicitation, we bring experts, and then it finishes, we made a publication, and then we try to do a little bit of dissemination with policy. But what about having something that, you know, it's work, it grows, and we can achieve and have many different ideas being born in this group, not just that comes from one side or the other one. So basically, the expertise that we try to bring in this group is categorized in this way. We have people that is very focused on AI, nuclear, bio, financial risk, science diplomacy, government science advice. We have that type of expertise on the academics. And then from the policy, what we want is the regional knowledge, like how policy works in Latin America, how does it work in Europe, what are their knowledge on disaster risk reduction, what are their best practices in security policy on nuclear risk. And that's why we sort of thought about this profile of the people and organizations that we want. And then we went into the next level, which was to identify where are they working. And that's how we gathered this first cohort and first group. So you can see from the GCR community, all the communities that you already know will be there. But there are also communities that are working on GCRs without putting the name that we work on global catastrophic risk. So, for example, we invited people from Jamaica, from Brazil, from the University of Singapore, from the University of Japan, that are also doing some individual work, being natural disasters, or being AI, or being some other one. In October, we had these workshops, and of course, I didn't do these workshops by myself, and this is another key moment, I think, for everyone that has to remember that phrase that says you have to surround yourself with people that are more brilliant than you. And based on my experience, I had done some workshops before, and what happened before is that I will tell these facilitators what to do. And I didn't want to repeat that, so in this case, I seek for other groups, and that's how I found the Simon Institute for Conrad and Max. I'm here, so they can tell you more about that institute. And with them, it was such a rich opportunity to co-create together. So I brought my knowledge, they brought their knowledge, and then we together made some workshops for the people that were coming. And I think that's something that I will, I will foment, that's a Spanish word. I will try you to think about these things in order when you're doing this type of work. And some of the workshop outcomes, of course, was to think, what is our mission, what is our vision? And I think, like, as a mission, what we want to do is to build an expert group that is capable to effectively working together and to think about the global governance of global catastrophic risk. By the use of what? Of scientific evidence, that's what academics bring, and by the use of diplomacy, that's what the other part of the group brings. And with vision, we, of course, are thinking about a future where all species can thrive, not only humans, and that has been achieved because GCRs and X-risks have been prevented and not just mitigated. This is not set in stone. This, at the moment, is what I drafted for the report I wrote. This is something that we are going to discuss with the group to see if there is an agreement. Everyone is happy with this mission and vision? Perhaps not, but we have not reached that place yet because we are planning to bring all of them in person in October. And what has happened so far is that we have done a mapping of participants. What are they doing? Where are they working? What are the topics that are relevant for them? What are the things that they need? We are developing mechanisms of communication, and that includes having a LinkedIn group, an email that comes every month, and then a Google Drive where I upload the videos of the meetings that we have, for example. And of course, we have the monthly meetings, which is an excuse for them to meet constantly, to get to know each other a little bit more, and to build trust again. And then there is a handbook that is a report that I have drafted that is going to go into all the participants again to have agreement. One of the interesting things that we also had at the workshop is, what do they want to do? What are they most interested on? So in the area of how to improve research capacity, there are some very interesting points there. For example, a research agenda for GCR policy relevant questions. That's great because that's something that at CSER already we have done a little bit. Training of researchers on understanding and engaging with policy processes. That's something that we need, and we should be doing it more. And that's something that, for example, the Simon Institute is one of the ones that are providing this type of workshops for scientists that want to understand better the policy world and want to contribute to it. In terms of engaging in policy, you can see there are a lot of things: training of policymakers, a list of GCR policies, a checklist of influencing policy making. So we wanted to know what the group wants, when do they want it, and how, if we have the capacity to do it. And when I said that we are having monthly meetings with the excuse to have more people talking and meeting, what I mean is this. At this point, there are like 3 different testing processes, let's say. The first one was to bring them together to use, for example, one of our first meetings was focused on a policy brief that one of the members wrote, and then she wanted feedback on it. So it was just feedback. The second meeting was about sharing the best study cases that we have had in the Science-Policy Interface. Okay, and the third one was one of our members has built an Airtable, like an Excel table with policy recommendations based on, I think, 500 scientific articles that he has written. So with this, I wanted to test how many people come. Are they doing feedback to each other? Are there meetings happening after the meeting has finished? Are they meeting in person? Are they meeting by themselves later? And then the next meeting was, okay, now that we tested these 3 ideas, which is they don't have to do much more than just give feedback, let's see how they react when we bring an external stakeholder. So we brought the Biological Weapon Convention representatives to show what are the 3 models that they are discussing at the moment to create a science and technology advisory board. So there were, I think we had 10 people coming to that meeting, or I have to double check, between 10 and 12, and we gave advice in this case. And now our next meeting is going to be another testing. I want to see how many people comes to a meeting when we say, okay, now together we're going to try to fit into the Summit of the Future, which is happening next year. Through one of our members, we have a window of opportunity to come up with policy, concrete ideas of what they can do. So let's try to work together and see how we can make it happen. And by the way, this is what's happening at the workshop in the afternoon. So if this is something that calls your attention, please come. And so with the next steps for this group will be that for me, June and July is going to be a lot of assessment. I'm going to see I'm going to write on the report that I have at the moment, what went good, what went right, what went bad, what can we do to improve. For example, there are people that I invited to this group that I thought that it's impossible they don't come to the monthly meetings. I mean, and they didn't came, right? There are other people that it was a bit risky because they are so senior, they are directors of a whole institution that gives advice to the Americas, to Asia, and I thought, like, this is gonna be tricky, but I wanna see if they come. So he comes half the time, and when he doesn't come, he sends me an email. And of course, I mean, this could be failures because I made a mistake when I was evaluating these people to join the group. But we are not going to stop there, right? We are going to see this is a lesson learned. So now what I'm doing is to look for people with the same profile or someone from their own institution to come and replace this position, because we want people that come and are interested to work with us. And I really don't want to be the person that is like a kindergarten teacher telling them, tomorrow we have a meeting, are you coming? I think that at this point what we want is to work with the people that is very focused on that, and we already have them, so we now just need to expand a little bit our group and be able to have more people that is interested to work with us. And of course, as I mentioned, in October we have an in-person meeting, so that's for sure happening. And I also want to see if the virtual world, when it becomes to reality, the real world, it also has another type of feeling or production of the things that we can do together. So at this point, you already imagine that the invitation that I have for you is, do you want to join the Science-Policy Interface group? As I said, we are going to be working together. We're going to have to be bonding together as well. And I think this experience and being part of this process is very timing, especially now when finally we have GCRs and XRIs being part of the UN agenda, which is going to be part of the agenda of different state parties and countries. So now is the time, I think, that we go from knowledge to action. And please, if you are interested in this, come and join us. And as I said at the very beginning, was there something for you here in this presentation? I think I covered 2 of them. And the second thing that I want to say is that I hope that this presentation could inspire you and your institutions to do something like this. Because the idea is not that we are the ones doing it. The dream is that everyone is doing it. The dream is that everyone has a science policy interface being built in their own institutions, being GCRs, being alleviating poverty, being whatever is what is close to your heart. And the second thing is that this is V or bi-directional communication. So let's open the discussion. Let's be open about what our failures are, because I think sometimes we just focus on this was my success, and this is great, and my scientific career is going great, when I think we should be more honest to each other, because these vulnerabilities allow us to create bonding and allow us to create action together as well. So I said that I will finish telling you how this thing with the multilateral high-level panel happened. So Angela Kane is one of the members of the Science Policy Interface, and she is here. Thanks to her, she talked about us to Adam Pei, which is a person that works at the UNCPR, which is like a think tank from the United Nations, but also the University of the United Nations. So this person is the one that was creating all the roundtables to advise the high-level panel on multilateralism. So thanks to Angela, Max from the Simon Institute and I were invited. So when we were at this meeting with 30 experts, we had at least 2 voices, and Tobior was also there, 3 voices talking about these ideas of GCRs and existential risk. And from what I saw today on my email, from all the policy recommendations they attached 2 documents that is going to go to this high-level table. These 2 are like policy reports. One of them is the science policy report that I drafted, thanks to all the excellent work that we do with the Science Policy Interface, because they think that this is like an excellent example of a concrete initiative that we can copy at the UN. So am I too naive to think this is something good? I mean, I think this is the place where all the policy brokers and all the people that has been doing this work before me can tell me it's not going to go anywhere. Well, we will see, right? But how do we make it go to the next level? And that's why we have this conversation today, and I hope that this is the beginning of more conversations between all of us. And this is just a comic that we did for a bioengineering scientific paper we did, because we thought like we have to innovate, and as Angela, I think Angela Kane said about virtual reality, we thought like maybe comics could be some other way that we can engage people and young people. So you can go and see it. It's in English, Italian, and Spanish. It has 3 different scenarios of the future. And the only indicator I have is that we got more media requests. I have not had anyone approach to me and say, like, I saw your comic, please tell me more about policy on GCRs. So that has not happened, so I think like I have to keep innovating and doing some other things. So happy to receive your questions, and thank you so much.
Yeah, whichever one you like. And I'm just going to get, So thank you, Clarissa. And I know how much work you put into that, and it was so great that that email came this morning, because I think it really shows that often quiet pushing and pushing and pushing to get something done that you and Angela and our colleagues from the Simon Institute does eventually lead to something fantastic. And I'm glad that happened during the conference. I have a couple of questions from Discord to start with, from several of our friends who've been there for most of the last 3 days. And firstly, Pablo Suarez has a lovely question for you, Pablo from Boston, who you met on the first day. So he asked, what is the appetite for unconventional trust building amongst those that attend these high-level events? Is there scope for investing more in serious but fun ways to help people use humour to feel comfortable and connect and be creative in the face of the unknown? So do you see that amongst those high-level stakeholders that you're engaging with?
Something that we did at our workshops was an icebreaker, and the icebreaker was to say 2 lies and 1 truth. And that's how we discovered that one of our members has been featured on a Netflix documentary. And that was quite fun, and then that was a good excuse to reach out to this person and talk about that. So I think that's, in terms of fun things that we have tried to innovate, that's the only thing that we have done so far. I'm learning a lot from the person that was on the first day doing the icebreakers. I think that's something that we really need to liberate tensions and make people more like get out of these titles and all the things that we associate with them and just seeing them as friends and collaborators.
Great. And I think, so Pablo, who asked the question, is the guy from the first day.
Pablo, okay.
But he's coming to visit CSER in September, and with your workshop in October, I feel like we can make some of that happen, hopefully, here. There's a few questions from Ray Taylor. I'm just going to take the first one, which I thought was super great as an idea. So would you like to see a 24/7 panel of global catastrophic risk experts and interpreters that the White House or Madrid or Beijing or Tehran or Moscow could call on to get expert X-risk advice in a planetary emergency? So kind of a grand court of superstars of X-risk that can be pulled on in those moments.
Well, this goes together with an idea I had, because you see all these apps, and well, okay, I don't know the name of this app, but it would be great to have an app that you also have a lot of profiles of scientists with different level of seniority, and that you can just have like a phone call with them. So yeah, I definitely think that this is something that we should try and see where it takes us.
Great, and kind of bat phone to the GCR experts.
Yeah.
All right, I have two more quick ones, and then we'll go to questions in the room. And Tom's already ready on that. So next one was, could you share some more insights on your engagement with the Future Generations Bill in the UK?
Oh, okay. Well, it was quite excellent, because there were like 7 or 8 different things that they wanted to pursue or to ask the advisors on how to go, and there were 8 different sessions, and on these sessions they presented basically what they wanted to do, and then we engaged in a conversation about what was the feasibility of that, or if we have other learnings from other countries that we can build in. And I think this happened in March last year, so I think the bill has been in discussion since July last year. I may be wrong with the times, but that was more or less our involvement. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And that was from Yi Kwang Heng. And the last one is from Christophe Poirier. That's a French name, and I'm awful at French, so I'm sorry for that pronunciation. And so she's asking, how are you experiencing the perspective on the priorities of global catastrophic risk in the global south in the interactions you have? So I think she's asking what kind of level of pickup you've seen or response you've seen amongst those global south stakeholders.
Yeah, I think in the global south, the GCRs that I usually use as an entry point will be the extreme consequences of climate change. Yeah. And then depending, for example, if they are a country that has a volcano, of course, that will be another entry point on GCRs, but they are not going to be thinking so much about AI risk, because we have other types of priorities, and they are related with health and education, and it's not part of the top 10 things that are on the government agenda, I would say. And now coming back to the idea of the bat phone and what you had there, now that I have some time to think, I think one of the problems that we have is that the research that we do is too enclosed at scientific organizations. And that's the problem why they will not know who to call, or they will call the ones that they already know they have worked with in the past. So I've been asking all the time, like, do you have a database where I can, put the name of my colleagues for next time that you have something like this? And I feel that it's quite informal, and it's also happened in the moment. So if they need it in that moment, it's like, who do we know now? How can we connect with them? Call them or invite them, right? So it will be great to have someone in your institutions working in how to reach out to this, to whatever you want to influence, and make sure that your name and your expertise is part of the database that they have. So this is a job that sometimes I do, but I think that this is something that, centers should be more focused on how to do that. And another way to do it is to, every time that we have a scientific publication being produced, what's the policy aspect that we can exploit, let's say, from it, and immediately do like a policy brief, or do like another, I forgot the name, but something that can be a one page that then can be distributed. Because when you talk with policy brokers and policymakers, I think everyone will tell you that they don't read scientific papers. So they will read a summary of them, or something they saw on the news, or something that someone that they trust told them about that specific thing, being climate change or being lead poisoning. I don't know.
Yeah. That's a great response. Okay, Tom, take one.
Thank you very much, Clarissa. Gordon Glass. Building trusted network is clearly essential, and I also want to start by saying I really appreciate the cell in your presentation because, yeah, I want to be involved. But trusted network is the first step, and I wonder how much you've considered digging deep into people who understand the powers of persuasion, like corporate lobby groups use to really influence people. And there's a large volume of work from the advertising industry, for example, about how persuasion works, and particularly. One good example would be to turn a boring scientific paper into a sales letter to persuade. And I think there's a real step change in communication that can happen that way, as well as many others. But the question is, have you paid much attention to this? You're clearly good at it yourself instinctively, but I wonder whether you look at the methodologies.
Yeah, definitely. I think my friends laugh when I said that I stalk all the people a lot, but it's true. Like I go to the internet and I read interviews that they have made, or what does it say, their bio, what they have been working on before I approach anyone. And I think that's something that I also learned from I forgot his name, but he was the head of the science policy work at the OPCW, Chemical Weapon Convention, and he told me, for doing this job, you have to become a super diplomat, and a good one, because a diplomat will put his or her shoes in the other person and understand what do they need, how much time they have, like what are their passions, and all these things. And once you understand that from the other person, then you have a better narrative to come up to them and discuss things, projects, ideas, or even if you need a network opportunity. And this is something that I try to do it a lot, and it's nice. I mean, I learn about the career pathways of all the people that I work with, and I find fascinating what they do, and sometimes I see if they took a course, and I'm like, that course looks interesting, maybe I should take it too. So it also plays good on my own personal benefit. So I think, yeah, I mean, why not to do it?
Hi, I'm Marion Messmer. Thanks so much for your presentation, Clarissa. I'm the co-director of BASIC, and for those of you who don't know us, we work mostly on reducing nuclear risks. I found your science policy group really fascinating, and I have two questions about it. So when you were presenting your framework, you made a distinction between doing policy change through an individual approach or through a collective approach. So I was wondering how you selected the members of your group. Was that through the individual networks that you built up, or was that through a collective approach, or somehow differently entirely? And then the other question I have is, where do you see this going next? So you mentioned that a lot of it will be created by the group, but if you could sort of choose what they work on next or where you go next, what would your vision be for it? And then finally, I'll just also say, we're doing something similar but different at BASIC. We've got a network that specifically looks at next generation experts and researchers and future policymakers who work on nuclear questions. So if this is something that you're interested in, or if you're also interested in the sort of next generation aspect, then I'd love to connect and talk a bit more about that. Thank you.
Perfect. I think it's a little bit of both. For example, there are people in my network that I know they are excellent on the things they do. So some of them I invited to the group. And then, especially in the Global South, I had to make a big effort to look for these people. So I will go to conferences that are working on, that are discussing science policy, and then I will go to the session that is on global risk. So not GCRs, but global risk in general. And that's how I got to know Crystal Fury and other parts of the member. That one is an expert on risk communication, the other that's from South Africa, the other one is an expert on risk financing from Singapore, and that's more or less how I started inviting them. I made a big effort to bring people from the African research capacity, so if you're looking at us, please contact me. It has been impossible. yeah, I think I contacted 5 different people. One of them said yes, was an expert on gender and Africa, global risk. And then 1 week before she said, I'm not coming, and she didn't say anything more. So I was like, no. And that was, yeah, it's part of the learning. I definitely have to make a better effort. So part of my plan this year is to visit the Center for Strategic Futures in Singapore, to get to know a little bit more what they do and how they connect to the Southeast Asian region. So like more experts, more people, more network, please just let me know. And then the other idea is to visit the African research capacity. So if you are gonna see my emails, please respond, because I would like to visit them and then from South Africa see how the region is also moving. But if that's not happening, I already saw that I'm planning to go to the UN to do what I was planning to do there in the South Africa office, to go for some weeks and also get the connections with the Global South that they have. We already discussed this, so I think that this is probably what's going to be happening most. And the third question, I think, is what's my idea happening with the group? So I think my dream is that the group keeps growing, because I know not everyone is interested about one topic, or not everyone has the capacity to come when we need them because of their lives, their work. So I think that we can make it better if we have a bigger group, and then we have different type of experts coming and going, but not so much like they come once a year, a little bit more frequent, and I have to think about ways on how to make it happen. Maybe it has to be another type of monthly meeting, maybe it has to be more in-person meetings, but I'm not sure if their agenda also will allow them to do that. And the final idea and dream is that they can co-create policy ideas that can be tested in countries that are keen to receive them and test them, and then we can really see if these policy ideas are good or not, because I think that's the only way that we can really know. But let's see.
Paul had a question that he put on Discord, but I'm going to ask him to say it in the room. And then I think you spoke with such brevity, clearly used to speaking to policymakers who don't listen for more than 10 minutes at a time, that I think we'll finish a bit early at 10:50 so that people can have a half-hour coffee break.
That's a good plan. So Clarissa, thank you. That was a great talk. What do you think is the right balance between engaging a broad group of policymakers on specific policy requests, with a traditional political campaign on a particular issue, and long-term relationship building with particular policymakers that then become advocates themselves? Is there a concern? Do you have a concern about relying too heavily on particular policy brokers in your process?
Yeah, I think part of the rationale to involve us at the first stage with policy brokers was because of that, because sometimes governments come and go, and then something that you were building just stays into nothing and disappears. And yeah, working with these civil servants that they can maintain their position through time, I think it's the best approach. But of course, in times of crisis and an immediate action, when immediate action is needed, you need to have good relationships and trust building with these key stakeholders. And that's something that is, I mean, part of the plan as well of this science policy interface is to start inviting 1, 2, 3 levels like these policy brokers. And not only them, actually, another idea as well, and this has to be tested by the group and decided by the group, is when do we start bringing industry partners into the conversation to co-create policies? When do we start bringing the NGOs that have also something to say? And yes, I mean, it's a long process. I hope I can do it faster than it sounds. And, but that also, I think, requires some sort of financing, because I think this is a job that cannot be done by just a small group. It has to be done by like a proper office or group that can manage the team, that can look for the opportunities for the team, that can convey money to bring them all together and think about innovative ways, use VR, use whatever we have at hand to communicate this. So it's a holistic process, I think, that we are still at baby steps.
Any more questions in the room? Just checking. Quiet this morning. Okay, so we'll.
Do you have a question, I think?
Ah, I'm sorry, Juliet. Blind spot over here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Clarissa. This is really inspiring, and congratulations on your success thus far. My intuition would have been at an event in Cambridge on Science-Policy Interface to hear about the Cambridge Centre for Science and Policy, which has been established a long time ago already under Rob Doubleday. And I found particularly helpful when I was at CSER doing policy work. So I'd be curious what kind of synergies were possible through CSAP and through the CSAP fellowships that have been at least very helpful in earlier times. I wonder whether they've been running during the pandemic. So maybe I'd be curious how you think also in the future CSER could leverage and the X-Risk community could leverage the excellent networks and work that CSAP is already doing.
Yeah, I'm actually part of the people they contact when the fellows come. So I had some meetings this year, and I'm having more meetings coming. I think I have 4 already in place. And yeah, that's another way how to talk with people from the UK government. I think, although this year I got some people from the UN offices as well. And yeah, they do a great job in connecting Cambridge University researchers with these fellows, and I think they are doing it really good. I think that we could also be doing more things. For example, if we will have a policy transfer office at the University of Cambridge that is constantly seeking for this excellent research that we can transfer into policy, it will be great. And I think CSAP will be the house for it, for example. And yeah, I think that also at CSER we will need a person like that is an expert on doing this policy transfer communication. But yeah, let's see where it takes, because I also know that CSAP doesn't get all the funding that they deserve. So I think it's a problem with funding as well, that we are limited with the things that we can do. Unfortunately, I think universities are highly academic, and even though they say that policy is one of the things that they are so proud of it, policy impact, it's not as recognized as it should. So I think that's one of the problems that I see for these type of mechanisms to thrive, because we are limited by the university. At some point I was thinking, what if I create a program that is just focused on GCR and policy, and this program can become part of CSER, and then it maybe becomes a spin-off, and then it's just a center about GCR policy. And then having interviews with a lot of people, they told me, if you want to do it at the University of Cambridge, it's great, but your main thing is to produce research. This thing that you want to do will be your side job, or the side thing that you do. And that's exactly what I don't want, because I think that we have enough research that give us leverage to influence policy, and that's what I want to focus all my attention. So I think this is also like this should be a wake-up call to universities to invest more on the policy work that is being done. Otherwise, it gets blocked.
We actually had one last question with, I think, probably quite a quick answer, but it's a brilliant question from Discord. Oh, and Angela as well. So, sorry. We're going to be quick. 1 minute per question at this end. Spreading awareness, this is from Lisa on Discord. Spreading awareness of global catastrophic risk is clearly important, but what risks come with that increased awareness? So are there risks of that communication?
I think this is a question for Lara.
Okay, that's a great answer. Yeah. Lara, you will be answering that during the break.
So I guess that you mean like, what's the risk for a scientist to be advocating for some things?
Or maybe for some big ideas to be picked up by a wider audience. Some people who might not use that information for good might use it for evil. I'm really over-interpreting Lisa's question.
Yeah, I think that's, no, when I have been talking with scientists and I want to encourage them to do more policy, one of the concerns that I have heard is that what if it's my research is weaponized or used in other ways that I don't want to? And I think maybe this is not the best answer, but I think at this point, that you are at the breaking of collapsing, I think this is a risk that you should go for. You should just go and try to communicate. You will learn in the process. You will gather also a lot of people that think like you and want to help you to do it. Mm-hmm. So I think my recommendation will be like, don't think so much about the risks that come with it, and just try to advocate for what you truly think that is good. But gather yourself with people that understands the policy work. because they will also guide you on how to do it better or how to transform your idea into something that is more concrete. Sometimes I also see that policy recommendations are too broad, and I'm like, okay, I could have thought that, right? Like we need to be more like specific and more like, as we say in Peru, to the jugular. Like you have to go like, you know, to the point that they need to know.
The jugular.
The jugular,
yeah, exactly. Okay. Angela, last question from you.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this morning's both sessions that we had. And I have two comments. The first one really goes back to the question of trust, which I think has also come up in the Discord discussion. And I wanted to underline also what Paul and Clarissa both said, and that's the question of humbleness. I mean, humbleness is something that is absolutely fundamental. And what I want to underline as well is that trust you build up over years. It's not something that immediately you're being entrusted with something or you're being given trust, but it's something that you basically earn. And the best mechanism, in essence, to achieve it is really that you're honest. And that's something is really, really important, that you kind of portray something. Yes, you're humble, but you're taking yourself back. But on the other hand, you're also honest in what you can do and what you cannot do. And I think that really builds up a tremendous amount of trust. I mean, that's been my experience in having been involved in a fair number of negotiations. And that is something that is really, you also come with a reputation if you've earned that trust. And that is something that is a tremendous asset when you enter a negotiation, because if that is already known, then you have a tremendous advantage. And the other aspect that I wanted to come to, and now it's escaping me. Oh yeah, and that's the Science Policy Interface. And I wanted to bring to your attention, if you didn't know that already, the University of Chicago has a huge number of faculty that are working on economic policy. I mean, it's really huge. There are various institutes, they're very well endowed, and there's one person who is absolutely crucial, and that person basically comes and talks to them about how do you actually bring about the science and bring it to the attention of policymakers. It's basically a distillation of the science policies that actually can be brought to policymakers and to politicians. And it's an extremely important job that I think does not exist at many universities, and I think it should, because it's something there you have a tremendous knowledge that exists, but it is not mined as a resource, and it really should be mined as a resource. So that's just what I wanted to mention about the policy science interface.
Thank you. Thank you. Great comments at the end. We'll take a break now until 11:20 when we'll come back with the final panel focused on the science policy interface still. I have one challenge for Discord and for in the room for the half-an-hour break, which is that I have to sum up all of the 3 days in 10 minutes at 2 o'clock, which is implausible. So I would like to hear on Discord and in person, although I'm not sure I can speak to all of you in the break, what would be your one sentence to sum up the last 3 days, bearing in mind that we still have some excellent content to come. So yeah, see you at 11:20 when Paul will lead the panel. Thank you.